There's just a couple things. One is thank you for everyone who gave the demos. We just had a talk with South before this, talking about youth in tech and doing startups. And one of the things we were talking about is how hard it is to do a startup. And it's not just money, and it's not just can we succeed or not, but it's also times of loneliness, times of rejection. There's all this stuff that goes on. And for those of us who can power through it, we get there, but we also have to be peers to each other, to help each other. Because we can see it in other people and say, okay, come on, let's have a conversation, let's help each other. So I think we can learn a lot from what we're trying to teach youth for all of us, quite frankly. So that's one. The second is David Berkowitz is back there. And David, if you know David, you know that he is a leader and thought leader in marketing AI and other things, but marketing AI for sure. And he's got a new book coming out Tuesday. Trust me, it's worth it. If you're interested, to get a copy. So a couple quick trends for me. The biggest thing, I just spoke at the World Government Summit 2 weeks ago in Dubai, and I was asked to talk about what matters to governments worldwide. And the number one thing was audience and agents are driving all the transformation. So agents are easy to say, like, hey, there's agents that are going to pull this information, we'll have agentic architecture. It's really interesting to talk about. But the other thing we forget about is that us, humans, are deciding where to go. And as we do that, that's why TikTok is all of a sudden going nowhere, going really, really high, or podcasting comes back, or a certain channel is more popular. And that is completely shifting how we consume knowledge. And we have to be watching both at the same time. So that was one. The second was a concept of data pollution. So I teach on how to counter mis and disinformation for the U.S. government. And not to do it, but to combat it, just to be clear. Think of the worst people on earth. Like how do you deal with that? But as we're going through it, everyone talks about mis and disinformation and says it's bad, and they do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just bitch about it. So I'm like, all right, how do I change that? And so this concept, I was looking at how John Cleese creates humor with Monty Python, and he talked about how you have two different frameworks collide, and when they collide, people can get it. So I thought, okay, you have mis and disinformation over here, and you have pollution over here. Think of like raw sewage going into a river, and we would say we don't like that, and we're not only don't like it. We're going to set up the Environmental Protection Agency. We're going to set up rules and regulations. We're going to find people, and we're going to figure out who did it. We're going to stop it, right? Or air pollution, same thing. But when it's our neurons, we go, hopefully it was died, right? So that's crazy. So we got to think of it as data pollution, and we got to go upstream and downstream and figure out who's doing this, and really, make it harder for them to do that. So those are the two things I think that I'll start out with where we're probably most critical from a bigger trend presentation. And you can, if you're interested, if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see the post, and you'll see the video of that presentation.
Introduce yourself, yeah.
I met aloud you here today already. I'm Carlisha Robinson. I am a serial product manager. I have been in Austin for over 30 years. I've worked in IT, intellectual property, retail, been e-commerce all over the board. Recently, I was a chief product officer, chief customer officer at Beyond, which is the company that is owner of brands like Overstock, the new Bed Bath & Beyond, Zulily, and some others. Met the Sightbox team because we were launching new products and new brands on a rapid fire kind of model, and really depended on the Sightbox team to help us brand the company side and build logos and brand imagery and storytelling. Yeah, using AI. So we're doing things really fast. Currently, I am not with Beyond anymore, but doing more advisory and consulting work because I love the concept of startups and new innovations, and I'm on a mission to have people not be afraid of AI, but embrace it and use it to better their companies, their products, and the world. So that's what I am doing.
What are some future trends you're seeing where AI be embedded in the e-commerce space?
Yeah, so e-commerce is benefiting significantly from the use of AI. Starting with one of the examples that was shown earlier in updating product descriptions. the vendors, the products, the manufacturers of their products that we sell on our sites, they have a very bland and poor way of describing what their product is and what its utility and what its use is. And AI has helped us take those products and those descriptions that we get from the vendor and bring them to life for the customer. That significantly improves the customer experience because you can imagine someone my age, I'm not gonna tell you, going to the site and I'm looking for a specific sofa like this that might be the color that I want is brown, but my style might be more traditional and modern. Whereas a Gen Zer might like this same sofa, but it's more minimalist and more boho for their design. AI helps you identify who is the person that's shopping for said sofa for their purchases, but also present it to them in a way that matters to them. So it's hyper personalization that AI is helping us do on our sites, and that actually means, from a business perspective, more clicks, more items in carts, and more conversion, more people checking out and buying that exact same item, but for various reasons. So, and imagery is another area that we have seen a lot of use for. Manufacturers send you a bland picture of the sofa sitting on the concrete floor in their warehouse, but AI can help you put that image or that item into a design room that gives someone a feeling and inspiration behind what they're looking at. So the utility of AI is phenomenal for the commerce space, and we should be leveraging every ounce of that to give a customer a better experience and to make businesses more profitable. So I said a lot there. Sorry. Yeah. We got more for me?
Thank you, Carlisha. My name is Nathan Thompson. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Sightbox. And just to kind of, dovetail off what Carlisha was saying, we've had sort of a revolution at our agency with AI. Like Carlisha was saying, we've been using different tools to sort of, experiment and find different solutions. And it's really changed our entire workflow. So we have designers that are constantly using a journey. We have designers who are using a product called SegMind, which is able to sort of create sort of a workflow with generative AI. We use ChatGPT every day. So it is really changing sort of how we work as an agency, but it's also changing who we work with. So Charlie and I, we started really kind of working with startups about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago now. And really what we started getting into at the time was, it was still the time of mobile apps. This was still that was still a hot thing. And then that sort of gave way to a bit of the Web3 craze, and we sort of pivoted towards that. And then here comes this AI thing. And it's really changed entirely, like even our sort of perspective on it, because I think a lot of these other sort of technologies were interesting, but not as transformative. And so we're sort of looking at this as, this is sort of like, to us, like the dot-com boom all over again. This is like this is gonna be as transformative as, say, the internet was. And so we're sort of really sort of doubling down and saying this is definitely gonna be the future for us. And I know a lot of other industries are as well. So one of the other people that we work with, or the other group of people that we work with, are venture capitalists. So we actually work with about a dozen VC firms. And what's really interesting, of course, they always have to sort of plan ahead and see what's going to sort of be coming. AI is obviously part of their thing. It doesn't matter sort of what industry they're in. They're sort of looking for ways to bring AI into those spaces. And so obviously, if you have a product you're working on, include AI. I think everyone here has kind of been doing that. Robotics obviously is another big thing. One of the things that we do see maybe from a branding perspective, if you want to sort of get into some of that, because that's definitely something that we specialize in. We're starting to see, I think, and you saw it even in some of the products today. There's sort of going to be the product, but then there's going to be sort of the personality behind it. What's the chat bot, if you will. I think you're going to start to see at a certain point, an inflection point when brands become more about a personality, like it's a personification. You're not gonna have the product and then a chatbot, it's just gonna be the chatbot. And at that point, you're just interfacing with a personality. And I mean, you can kind of see that happening a little bit with even just the way, say, Alexa is different from Google Assistant, who's different than Siri, right? There's sort of these different personalities, and it's going to become more pronounced as time goes on, and you're going to sort of see a specialization in who you talk to. And it's not going to be so much about the fancy interface or what the design is, but sort of who and, you know, a little of their emotional intelligence and how they respond to you. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this evolves. Again, just like the internet was. Like, I think when the internet came around, it really was like, oh, this is an easier interface. The UX really sort of drove, it was a differentiator, right? And I think now you're going to start to see different differentiators in terms of how people interface. So
Talk a little bit about, we were just in San Francisco
yeah,
at Jeremiah's event,
Yeah.
Lava Lounge, and I think 10 or 12 of the companies that there were all agent
yes.
AI companies.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that trend and then some of the companies that we're working with specifically that are being
Sure.
agentic.
Yeah, and so we were just at an event in San Francisco, and what was really interesting, agentic is sort of the key word over there. So what they're starting to really see is this stringing together of different agents. So things are starting to become more autonomous. Things are able to sort of do reasoning and talking more to itself and sort of solving different problems. And one of the interesting things too is sort of seeing how they're building different layers. So we're starting to see, you know, you have this sort of this base layer, then you have the application layer, and then you're starting to see almost this commerce layer. And one of the startups that we're working with right now is actually trying to break through a bit of this. It's kind of interesting. They're trying to create a way for agents to sort of spend money with other agents and sort of make this, because they're realizing that the world sort of works on money. And so there's a certain point where these agents are running into a wall and saying, well, I'd like to help, but I can't because I can't spend money. I can't make this purchase.
Yeah, so the end of that. So this is where, and this is, I like Silicon Valley when I say this, but Silicon Valley is smart, but is the way I would say it. You know, what's needed in all of this are use cases. And so let me give you an easy example, or not easy, but an example. Take cancer. So if you're trying to battle cancer, you cannot graduate enough oncologists in the next 30 years to deal with a number of people who have different types of cancer. It's not possible. So basically, most people in the world who get cancer either never get treated or get inferior treatment. It's not like here, right? And so what do? Well, AI is a solution. Well, then you have to have agents for clinical trial recruitment, for medical treatment algorithms, for radiology, pathology, gene scans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they all have to learn how to talk to each other so you can actually get a better treatment decision at the point of care. And you could do that same thing through any disease. So, but that requires scientific people or medical people to be friends with tech people to actually have a breakthrough. Otherwise, we just have a lot of, and I agree with what you're saying, like the hot thing is agents, agentic architecture, it's agents, it's awesome. But without these use cases and other people, it will just be a lot of noise. And that's the opportunity for all of us, I think.
Well, let me get your hot take on agents. If agents will be able to spend money with each other, Carlisha, what's going to happen to e-commerce when your agent already knows that you need a couch or a table, and it's just going to go do it for you?
Yeah, so if you think about it from a designer's perspective, I call myself an amateur home designer, right? Is a lot of people want a certain look, but they have no idea how to really create that look, right? So I want to create a room that looks like this. And all of these things may not be sold from the same place. It may not be available, but I want this look, I want this room. So, and I'm giving you a budget, right? You know, on what I want to spend for that room. So an agent can go out and source all of the sofa, the table, the chairs, the rug, the curtains or whatever, and come back and tell me, and show me, here's the look, here are all the things, again, okay, this is the color. I like my blues a little bit more moody, and then go and do that, and then go buy it all for me, right? So the future for that is not that far off. And most people that shop now are not loyal shoppers to anywhere, so I don't really care where you get it from. It can be from Wayfair, from Bed Bath & Beyond, from Overstock, from West Elm, from, you know, wherever it is. It can be from a place that is a brick and mortar store that doesn't actually sell online, but they may ship and deliver, right? So, you know, like the living spaces. So all of those options are, you know, are so readily available. It's just those systems and those types of merchants talking to each other to enable that to happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, the vision is possible.
Well, last question for me, for Bob.
Okay.
So if we're gonna have agents interacting with each other, how do we know who's lying and who's not lying? We're talking about misinformation.
Yeah.
Who's got the source of truth?
Well, there's the other agents that will do that. I mean, that's the quick answer.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is, if you think about it, we have cycled through some of this in analytics before. So without getting into the name of the companies, we've had Fortune 500 companies that said, we don't want to be surprised by any issues ever again. You're like, how do you do that? Well, one way you can get close to that is you actually look at what's normal. And if you understand the corridor of what's normal being discussed about that company, its products, its services, its people, it's all that kind of stuff, any anomalies you see. So what we'll be really good at with agents is I think we're going to be able to study enough data to see anomalies. And those anomalies could be saying something that's wrong, could be the wrong choice of words, could be the wrong math formula that's used, and it will click it like that. And that I think is what will happen. We can do it now, it's just that we'll be able to do it faster as time goes on.
Plus, we don't know who's lying. You know, this a person. So, yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're
Yeah.
truthful.
Yeah.
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 Any questions from you guys before we wrap?
Curious to hear on combining ideas from the two of you. There's potential for there to be a combination of this, like extreme, not just hyper, but like uber personalization and the custom tailoring of personalities, such that it's possible that brands don't just make new and exciting personalities that are unique, but they could be new and unique and always changing to be most effective against your personality and state of mind in the moment based on whatever they can observe. And that gets like either amazing because it will get you the product that you want, or dystopic because now you can't help yourself and your human psychology is being subverted by perfect information and agents to make you always want to spend your money. So anyway, just curious if that inspires any thoughts.
I think with everything there are guardrails, right? There has to be a point of which and the line keeps moving, right? And I say that because if you think about now how much personal information we put out about ourselves already, anyway, right? And so that line of what's personal when it has already moved out. Your post on LinkedIn, your post on Facebook, or your tweet on X, anyway. But all your information exists kind of out there anyway. So your personality has already been described, whether you knew you were doing that or not. Your likes, your dislikes, your beliefs, things that So a lot of that is where does is your social security number the line? Is your bank account the line? Like, what is the line that is going to say, okay, you know too much about me and you've gone too far? And that's why I gave, in the example, like, I want to create this thing, but this is my budget, right? So that tells me, don't go and buy the most expensive version of this, but maybe I need to get the sofa that looks like the one that's in the Kardashian house, but I need to get that from Living Spaces, right? Or, or what I care most about is the comfort of my sofa. So not only do I want it to look like that, but it needs to be really comfortable. So that might lean to what the material should be. But those side chairs, nobody really sits in those. They're just kind of cutesy, right? And so they don't have to be something that I sit in for hours, because that's just a conversation of I'm going to be here for a couple hours. But I watch TV all the time, and I work with my laptop in my lab on my sofa, so comfort matters. So I think those kinds of things are the things we have to be able to feed into it, and for it to respond to be the agent for us to go and find these things and help us make good decisions.
That's good. Well, I hate to say this, but the marketers ruin everything. Kind of know that. So, what is kind of interesting, I think, is if you look, there was sort of this, look at what marketing has done to sort of social media, right? It started out as sort of this, showing your family and your friends and a place to hang out, and now it's just been sort of taken over. And so, in some ways, I think that was sort of when marketing sort of entered the fray. Now we have influencers doing everything. They're going to try. The same thing's probably going to happen to AI. That's just going to be, I think, an inevitability on some level, right? They haven't figured it out yet, but they will. What I do think is going to be interesting, though, too, is I kind of feel like the tech world has sort of learned a valuable lesson in what happened with social media, and the fact that giving certain companies that much control and power really wasn't maybe a great idea. And so I think there's going to be, and you can sort of see it now, there's a real push right now to make AI very open source, right? There's a lot of people who are like, right away, we need to make this open source. And I think that's a good thing, because I think what you're ultimately what people are sort of sensing is this shouldn't become the next Facebook. Like, even as OpenAI is sort of paving the way, they're like, well, we can't just let one company or two companies or three companies rule this. And so there's a real push to sort of democratize, so hopefully, so that your agent has some sense of purity to it, right? And you have at least one layer that you can trust, and then it has to sort of work through the rest of it. But
yeah, so agentic AI is certainly the topic du jour, but it feels like there's a huge gap between employees' ability to use AI today versus what is possible. What are some of the do's and don'ts for companies that need to help people through that change process?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it leads to something about Garrett, what you guys are going to present later. But it's the big thing with companies, I think, with technology is how do you get people to absorb content more effectively, and how to make better decision making. That's part of what you were getting at and what you're building, right? So that's the journey, and we don't need massive breakthroughs. We need to just help do that. So a very simple thing would be take this session here. If you were looking at it for an hour, it went to an app, and you could translate it into any language in the world, or you could do an audio summary of it, or you could do bulleted points, or even better, the person who's seeing in Indonesia actually has an idea. They translate it back into English, and it comes this way, and the next thing you know, it leads to a good thought. So two-way absorption of content, two-way absorption, two-way sharing of ideas. I think that's critical. I mentioned Garrett. I mean, you guys are a great example of this. You're going to be presenting this, I think, in like 2 hours, looking at how you interrogate spreadsheets. So you have all this quantitative information that Garrett and the team at Ringer Sciences get, but then they can interrogate it and actually create it into a text-based approach where you're actually having exactly what you want. So that ability to rip through a spreadsheet is awesome. So I think it's like a lot of like small victories like this improve the absorption, and all of a sudden we then iterate from there. The other thing I'll just add, since I got the mic here, is like just real quick, is I always remind people that the web was formed in, depends on how you look at it, 1989 or so with Tim Berners-Lee. It took a while for things to happen, right? If you look at the human genome map, we were all gonna have new medical treatments like the next year. That was 1984. It took a while. In AI, we're all like, oh my gosh, if I don't get moving today, I'm screwed. It's not true. It's going to be another decade or two of innovation or war, and so we just have to keep at it.
I think the only thing I'll add is, and we talked about this earlier, it's getting people over the fear factor, right? So people are normally afraid of things they don't know or they don't understand. So I find myself trying to explain to my teams who have been rooted in the company and in the way of doing things for so long, like since 1999 or something like that, and try to make it more familiar. I use the examples of, AI is to LLM models and, and to data as your, scientific calculator, is to a mathematician, or you don't use your brain anymore to figure out a really hard math problem. You just whip out your calculator or your phone, right? I explained to my kids, like, do you know what a Rolodex is? And they're like, well, Oh, you mean a watch? Like, no, a Rolodex. It's like yeah. It's, it's where we used to write down phone numbers, put them in alphabetical order, and you couldn't carry that with you. But now you don't know anybody's phone number, like by heart. You only know you have their number in your phone, and then you don't have to look it up. You just ask Siri or or Alexa or somebody to call somebody. So you have to make AI feel that useful in a utility way for people, for them to go, oh, that can help me. And then once it's helping me, oh, I just thought of another way that I can help myself do my job better, or help what I'm doing be more effective for the company. And then people kind of come along, but until they can figure out what's the utility of this. Oh, it's not replacing me, it's just making what I have to do every day easier to do. And it's allowing me the time to work on things that really need my brain power versus these mundane things that I hate to do, which is why I like the example of updating the JIRA tickets, right? Everyone that loves Agile and Scrum and Kanban and all, they love the methodologies, but they hate the tasks that go along with the methodology itself. So those kinds of efficiencies can only just make us use our brains for things that are more innovative and creative, and more productive for us. So.
Thank you all very much for coming. I just want to give a shout out to everything. Thank you for letting us crash your spot here.
Love it here.
And Donna, appreciate it. I want to thank my wife, the bag, and Dakota for helping us, and Zach on the camera. And of course, the demo companies, thank you for coming and presenting your ideas. Hopefully you make some connections here. We'd love to chat. We are gonna wrap up in here, so we'll move out into the outside as we clean up. But thank you for coming. Connect with us all on LinkedIn and social media everywhere. And Carlisha, thank you for being a guest.
Yes.
Look forward to working together someday again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.